Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. So today, I guess I chose violence because I've decided to compare the PlayStation VR2 to the Meta Quest. Now I understand this is not apples to apples, but we're just going to be looking at the current industry, the games they provide, all of that information. I'm not here to pick a side. In fact, if I was picking a side, I'd actually be on Team Sony because I just love the concept of what the PlayStation VR2 was supposed to bring to the table. Better graphics, more robust games, and honestly, I love a lot of Sony's main IPs. So I want to be on Team Sony, but unfortunately, that's not really the way the industry is going. I know no matter what I say during this video, I'm going to tick some people off, but today I'm bringing receipts. I know my last video definitely annoyed some people. We're going into deeper detail on the current overall status of the industry, but there are definitely pros and cons here on both headsets, which I will get into. A lot of time, VR is just pick your poison. You know, do you want mobile? Do you want better graphics? That's one thing. That's your subjective opinion. When we get into the objective stuff, like I said, I'm bringing receipts, and unfortunately, it's not looking great for PlayStation VR2, but towards the end of the video, I'll discuss how that can change. Now, there are, of course, links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, but before we jump in, this video is brought to you by my sponsor, Kiwi Design. Kiwi has accessories for all of your favorite headsets, and they finally started releasing some new products for the Quest 3. On screen, we have their brand new extra comfy Quest 3 Elite strap. I've been using head straps from Kiwi for years now, and they're hands down my favorite. There's a link to Kiwi down in the description, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support my channel. Now, before we all divide into VR tribalism, I actually want to start with a message of peace. I want the overall VR industry to grow. High-end, low-end, mobile, console, PCVR, I want all aspects of VR to grow. Now, at the same time, if I see BS, I'm going to call it out. You can't be all hype and just be like, VR's the best, because then it becomes a laughing stock. People don't look at it seriously. If you're claiming something's amazing and it's really crappy, yeah, it looks really bad. So, with that note, things just seem worse than ever. People seem more divided. Everyone is just drawing a line in the sand, and I can make the lightest of opinions lately, and, you know, people tend to lose it. Listen, everyone's fair game here. I made some fun videos comparing PlayStation VR2 graphics to Quest 2 graphics. Everyone got pissed, had to remind me that, you know, the Quest is a mobile console and it's cheaper. Yeah, obviously I know this. I'm just having some fun comparing graphics. Now, like I previously said, I definitely want the PlayStation VR2 to succeed. It offers up experiences you can't get anywhere else. And let's start with where they're definitely beating Meta hands down, and that's the graphics. Now, you can clearly see this in games that release multi-platform, but where the difference is even more drastic is in exclusive titles. There is nothing on the Quest 2 or Quest 3 that comes remotely close to comparing with Gran Turismo 7, Resident Evil 8, the Resident Evil 4 remake, No Man's Sky, and Horizon Call of the Mountain. Just like the hardware is apples to oranges, so is the graphical comparison. This is usually where people like to point out the fact that the PlayStation VR2 is a tethered headset and requires the power of a PlayStation 5, which is obviously correct, but goes back to my whole pros and cons discussion. Mobile hardware can only take you so far, and if you're looking for the best of the best, it really only comes from the PlayStation VR2. Now, I will digress for a second here because I hear the PCVR people wanting to chime in. Yes, of course, your RTX 4090 is more powerful than a PlayStation 5, but almost no one develops exclusively at that level, so the PC platform lacks optimization, and in multiple cases, like Red Matter 2, the PSVR2 version actually looks better than the PC version no matter what hardware you're on. But overall graphics is today's easiest discussion. If visual quality is your highest priority, then it's a no-brainer. The PSVR2 is the winner hands down. Now, I'm sure there'll be a few comments on pancake versus Fresnel lenses, but I'm really focusing more on the overall game visuals. The Quest ports over a 10-plus-year-old version of Resident Evil, while the PSVR2 can give you a brand new remake. But moving on from graphics, there's a much more important factor, and that's the overall games library. The main reason why people choose one console over another is exclusive titles. Love it or hate it, that's what sells the hardware. And the Sony PlayStation VR2 has delivered some really great games in the last 11 months. However, it's a very unique situation because the majority of these games are hybrid titles. They already released on flat screen, meaning what's the point to go get the VR hardware? It's not like you're getting access to new games that you can't get anywhere else. So they're not truly exclusive. And the fact that they previously released on flat screen makes you less likely to go out and get the VR setup in general. You already played these games. I'm not going to go spend another $550 to replay games. Now, I know some people don't feel this way. Some people wait for the VR release, but that is the exception, not the norm. So while the PlayStation VR2 lineup is filled with a bunch of quality titles, there's still a lack of incentive to go out and buy the hardware. And you can actually see this in the fact that the #1 selling VR games actually aren't these big blockbuster titles. Additionally, those big games are in very specific genres that not everyone plays. There's big portions of people that don't touch shooter, horror, or driving games. So you're basically left with No Man's Sky and Horizon Call of the Mountain, which are great games, but one's really old and the other isn't exactly a hardware seller. Another shot to Sony's library is the lack of backwards compatibility. This definitely hurts because there's plenty of great PlayStation VR1 games that I would love to play with updated graphics. Now, some games were upgraded, but they're not all free, and it didn't include some of my favorites, like Farpoint and Iron Man. The rest of the PlayStation VR2's library is predominantly made up of multi-plat games. Now let's go ahead and move on to the Quest lineup, which historically has been very casual, not the type of games I'm looking for, and nothing I would say you absolutely have to play until recently. They're finally starting to push out some better games like Assassin's Creed Nexus and Asgard's Wrath 2, which I absolutely love. It's still hard to stack either of those games up against the best of what the PlayStation VR2 has to offer, but where meta does come through is with backwards compatibility and a much larger array of game types, genres, and features. The library of games is nearly triple the size, and it's not predominantly filled with shooters and horror titles. There's multiple different social applications if that's what you're into, a vast array of exercise games, and now there's even mixed reality titles. Now, it's easy to say comparing the games might be a quality versus quantity thing, but that's not really the case. Overall, the PlayStation VR is just a little bit more niche in terms of what it has to offer and what gamers it appeals to. The Quest has a larger array of games, more genres, more use cases. So it's not exactly quantity over quality. And this is a great spot to move into the overall features. When it comes to the PlayStation VR2, it's basically just for gaming. They really don't offer much else. Sure, you could play your flat screen games using the VR headset as a screen, and you can watch some content, but it's not great for that. It doesn't have access to like 3D Blu-rays, which is an app that people have been surprised is missing for a long time. So the overall functionality is just games, which is fine. I'm completely okay with that. Like I said, apples to oranges here. If it's just dedicated for games and it delivers, that's awesome. It doesn't need to give us everything. However, what appeals to a lot of people is they just get more functionality with the Quest. You know, like I said, it's a mobile device. You could take it with you anywhere you go. You can use it for PCVR. It's really good for watching things like Netflix on the go, or if you don't have access to your TV, you're in a house with one TV. It's a good watching experience. Is it fantastic? No. Do I prefer a TV? Yes. Again, we have mixed reality, which I've gone on about, which I'm not thrilled. I've had a few good mixed reality experiences, but overall it doesn't blow me away. And now they're even pushing in the productivity, which for me personally is laughable. I've tried it for productivity and I don't think it's great, but hopefully it gets better over time. That's the future they want. I don't see it as a feature. I know people who do. To each their own, like I've said a million times. What I'm trying to say here, though, is just the overall functionality or bang for your buck is there with the Quest, and that's pretty much undeniable. You may not care about those other features, which is completely fine. Now, there's other major aspects of these two platforms that we have to discuss, starting with the impact to the industry and overall sales. Now, for some people, this might not seem important at all. I don't care about the sales figures. I have the hardware. I'm happy. I'm having fun. But you need to push the industry for it to continue to grow and for us to continue to get games. And when it comes to sales figures, it's not looking good for the PlayStation VR2. I know people have come at me saying, how do you mysteriously have numbers that nobody else does? That's not true. Amazon makes their sales figures public. You could go back and look at them. And continually, the Quest has been selling 30 to 40 to 1 compared to the PlayStation VR2. That is the difference. And with just that number there, with Amazon being one of the biggest retailers in the world, you could basically say, okay, well, if it continually sold 30 to 1, 40 to 1 throughout this time period, we have an estimate on how many Quests are out there. the tens of million. Okay, divide it by 30, divide it by 40, divide it by 20 to get rough estimates, to see what's out there. Additionally, I've spoken to so many developers on this. Since my last video, I reached out to even more developers, and their opinions have been pretty bleak. But just to give you recent numbers, when we're looking at sales of Amazon, the PlayStation 5 sold 1,000 units in the last 30 days. This is across the Christmas holiday, 1,000 units. And then that's the base unit without Horizon. You throw in the Horizon one, it's basically the same. You get another 1,000 or so units. You look at the Quest 3 alone, the base model, 20,000 sales. That's 10 to 1. But the Quest 2 sold even better, much better than that. So the sales difference is huge. And I know there's plenty of reasons why the Quest outsells the PlayStation. First off, you can only sell a PlayStation VR2 to people who own a PlayStation. So you went from 300 million Americans down to 50, or it's actually less because 50 million is like total sales, not US sales. So you obviously cannot sell to everybody. You're selling to a much smaller group. Additionally, standalone, it just gives that more options to it. You just pick it up, you're good to go. Obviously, there's a stigma against the tether, which I've historically said I will take a tether any day for better games, but most people don't feel that way. So we're looking at these sales figures, and the Quest is crushing the PlayStation VR. And why does that even matter? Well, if there's not enough install base out there, developers cannot afford to develop on this platform. And I've spoken to people, most of them said don't use our name, which I wouldn't anyway. But one statement was, there's not a large enough daily active player base on Sony to make a multiplayer only game. Now, you'd have to go cross-platform, which opens up a can of worms. Rec Room recently came out and said, listen, we'd love to bring Rec Room to the PlayStation VR2, but not financially doable, not economical. Because again, they'd have to use resources to bring it to another platform, support another platform, and they're not going to get a big user base from it. So sales difference is tremendous. It's just as big as that graphical difference. And I know as much as we want to say, well, the games are so much better on PlayStation VR2, it's higher quality, it's just better all around. Who cares about the sales numbers? You have to care. You have to care because developers are going to start pulling out. They're going to start saying, what's the point? We shouldn't support this hardware. We're not going to make money. It's the reason why we're getting a lot of shoddy releases on the PlayStation VR2 compared to other platforms. Now, sometimes all the releases are just shoddy, but they seem to be exceptionally bad on the PlayStation VR2 lately. Or that's the reason why games are released just much later. So again, why would you go about and buy the hardware if you have to wait extra long to get the games? Because developers are like, PlayStation VR2 is an afterthought. Let's get a good release. Let's get the game working. Let's make sure it's good. Let's free up some resources. Then we'll consider the PlayStation VR2. That's what everyone's doing. Unfortunately, that's where we are. And on top of developer support, general consumer faith is also getting pretty bad.
We keep doing this. I keep making excuses for Sony, and I'm like, well, they're waiting for this, and they're waiting for that, and they're not doing advertising because of this. And I keep apologizing for fucking Sony, and I'm tired of apologizing for them. It's freaking Sony, man. They freaking put a headset out and they don't support it. This is ridiculous. Why am I sitting here apologizing for Sony?
Now, I know this video is getting very ranty, but there's just so much information on this. And I make a 10-minute video and I can't get it all out, and I talk really fast and I try my best. And as much as I want to support the PlayStation VR2, these are objective facts that I'm just relaying. There's no point to just hype things up for the hell of it. It doesn't help the industry. If you sit there and go, PlayStation VR2 is amazing, 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 you talk a couple people into buying it and then they think it's crap, it's worse for the overall industry than being like, hey, here are the crappy points. Sony, please do something about this. So I want Sony to get back in here. I want them to restore consumer and developer faith. And I want them to at least tell us what their plans are. Maybe drop a PlayStation VR2 sale so they get this moving again. This is the main reason for the negativity here. I'm just calling it like it is, guys. But let's get back on point. There's another aspect that I always hear constantly, and that's there's a difference in what the gamers want. And I'm hearing this from developers. So developers what the PlayStation VR2 gamers want is they always want the graphics pushed to the max. They always want the latest features included, like foveated eye tracked rendering and the haptic triggers. You know, God forbid you don't include these, you get your butt handed to you. So there's so much emphasis to push the graphics to the max and make a more robust experience, and they just don't get the return on it. They have to work harder on the PlayStation VR2 for less of a return. And while, you know, people will say, oh, everyone's a little kid on the Quest, that's where the sales are. I know it sucks. You want the big games. Depends who you are. But things like Gorilla Tag and Beat Saber, they fly off the shelves. They make a ton of money. And there is room for bigger games because Saints and Sinners recently announced that they made 100 million. So there is rooms for more mature and robust games. But there's a limit where it is. You know, you got to be able to stuff it onto the Quest and get it to function on that mobile hardware, because that's where the install base was. And developers are going to chase the install base because it's the only possibility for them to make money. And at the same time, the Quest community is a lot more forgiving. Sure, there's plenty of people out there who write off plenty of great games, like Underdog's just released, and they're like, this is more crap. I want a more robust game. This is just an arena fighter. And I understand that sentiment. At the same time, though, it's a great game with amazing mechanics and shouldn't be written off. It's a weird stage here. But there's plenty of people who are of the younger generation who enjoy those experiences. They drop in, drop out, have a good, fun time. They're not everyone looking for Asgard's Wrath 2. And that's kind of why Asgard's Wrath 2 hit so hard for me. I really wanted the Quest to finally start to deliver higher end products. And for me, that was one. The game is huge, robust. I play it every day. I'm loving it. But this is not an Asgard video. I could digress all day long. But let's just stop here and go into the future of both platforms. Now, Meta is just burning money for the Quest. And no matter what, they're going to make sure it succeeds. They're shoveling money into the fire pit to make sure VR grows. So I don't see that stopping no matter what. You know, the number of sales keeps going up. The games are getting better. Overall, it's looking pretty good. They own so many studios now. The studio behind Iron Man VR, and they bought Senzaro in the past, which gave us Asgard's Wrath. They have the studio behind Supernatural, which is probably one of the best VR workout games. So they got us covered for new content, hopefully. And I expect to see like 1 or 2 big games from this year. That's my expectations. Now, Sony, I have developers telling me we think Sony's just going to abandon the PlayStation VR2. I don't really think that's the case. I don't hope that's the case, but I've had multiple developers tell me that. Like, they're like, we have no faith in it. The sales aren't there. We don't make money off of it. We're giving up on it. And it looks like Sony is too. Now, Sony might say, listen, let's either cut our losses or let's invest in and try and make this successful. And if they do that, you will start seeing more advertisement for the PlayStation VR2. We'll probably get a nice sale on it. Hopefully, they'll at least announce some upcoming exciting titles, VR exclusives, to give us a reason to want this hardware, like a special God of War or something only available in VR. Something like that would be fantastic. Just give us a little peek. Do some updates. So we, at least as a consumer, know you still care about VR. Give us our 3D Blu-rays or whatever other functionality that people are asking for. Deliver this. Like something simple, like if someone plays a flat game with the VR headset on, you can't watch what they're playing. You can watch a VR game, but not a flat game. It's a weird thing. Why don't we, why does that not exist? Just those little things to show us, hey, we still care about VR. We are thinking about it. We are doing something. Anything to restore faith for the consumer and the developers. They can do it. I hope they do it. I know some people are like, yeah, this should be Sony's year. They're going to deliver a ton of original first-party IP games, but I don't see it happening. I really hope I'm wrong. Now, this is where you go to the comments and just start bashing the crap out of me. Only at this point, you can bash the crap at me because you made it to the end of the video. If you didn't, you're probably going to say something that I already spoke about and already proved you wrong. I'm sure about this. Trust me. All right, I'm being a jerk here. I'm having some fun. But I'm going to sit back, eat some popcorn, read the comments, And I will do my best to answer you, but these tend to get very violent, these conversations. Don't go into tribalism. Let's watch VR grow for everybody. I want the best. I want the best games, the best hardware. I want to see it grow. I love VR. That was today's video. If you enjoyed it, thumbs up. If you're new here, consider subscribing. And as always, I'll see you guys on next time.